online hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
We're going to call this meeting of the Vehicle Weight Safety Study Task Force kickoff meeting to order. So welcome task force members and members of the public to this meeting. My name is Kayla McDonald. I'm an associate deputy director, charge of the Vehicle Weight Safety Study. I'm joined here by other members of our CTC staff. We have Vincent Ma, Sasha Linker, Paul Golozewski, Justin Behrens, Dylan Jimenez, and Brandy Fleming. And I hope I didn't forget anybody. Except, of course, our esteemed executive directors online, who I'll pass it over to in just a minute. If we could advance the next slide. So we're going to call roll by organization and hear from our clerk webinar logistics. Then we're going to pass it over to our executive director for her remarks. Overview of the task force process and proposed meeting schedule, and roundtable discussion on task force member perspectives, closing out the meeting with public comment. I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Dylan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm Dylan, and I'll be your clerk today. As I call roll, please have your lead representative indicate their presence. California Office of Traffic Safety.
Good morning here.
Good morning, thank you. California Department of Motor Vehicles.
Good morning here.
Thank you. California Highway Patrol.
Morning.
California City Transportation Initiative.
Good morning, here.
California State Association of Counties.
Here.
Alliance of Automotive Innovation.
Here.
California New Car Dealers Association.
Present.
American Automobile Association.
Here.
Streets for All.
Here.
American Association of Retired Persons, California. Active San Gabriel Valley.
Present.
National Federation of the Blind of California.
Hi, here.
Safe Streets Research. California Farm Bureau. And United Contractors.
Present.
I will move on to the webinar logistics. Welcome to the California Transportation Commission Vehicle Weight Safety Study Task Force meeting. The meeting agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. All the presentations for today's meeting are also available on the Commission Meetings page of our website under the View/Download Meeting Materials tab. Any document the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov, and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language translation is being provided on the webinar for this meeting. You should see the translators on the screen. Live closed captioning is also available. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Presenters. If you are on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. If you are presenting remotely, we hope that you will turn on your camera during your presentation if you have one. Members of the public. We welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk, that's me, at the front of the room to let us know if you want to comment on an item. For those attending via Zoom, you should see the webinar control panel likely located at the bottom of your screen. There, you will find the Raise Hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the Raise Hand feature as early into the item as you can to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it is your turn to make your comment. Alternatively, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment. Please be sure to include the agenda item number you are commenting on. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee and can create confusion for staff when making comments. For all meeting attendees, please do your best to be concise. Please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translation. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 2 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on any single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dylan. Closing out tab 1, moving on to tab 2, is CTC Executive Director remarks. I will pass it over to Tanisha Taylor.
Thank you, Kayla. And my apologies for not being there with everyone in the room. It's so great to see everyone participating today. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the AB 251 Vehicle Weight Safety Study Task Force Kickoff Meeting. Before we begin, we were going to hear from the author of the legislation requiring this study, Assemblymember Chris Ward, but the Assemblymember was called into session this morning and he's unable to join us. A representative from Assemblymember Ward's staff is on the line and will offer some remarks on behalf of his office. And I believe we have Charles Luden. So maybe I'll turn it over to him to give some remarks from the Assemblymember and on behalf of the Assemblymember before I continue my remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to speak on this in members' behalf. My name is Charles Loudon. I'm the Legislative Director for Assemblymember Christopher Ward, and I also was able to staff him on AB 251, the bill that put together the task force and also directed the CTC to put together the study. In 2023, an estimated 1,057 pedestrians were killed in California car collisions. While pedestrian deaths have risen by 54% over the past decade, all other traffic deaths have increased by only 13%. At the same time, the size and weight of vehicles sold in the United States have also increased dramatically. J.D. Power estimates that over 80% of new vehicle sales in 2021 were SUVs and trucks for the first time ever. While the rise in pedestrian fatalities has many causes, there's growing evidence that the increase in vehicle weight has played a key role. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, when struck by an SUV at speeds of 20 to 39 miles per hour, pedestrians had a 30% fatality rate compared to 23% when struck by a normal sized car. In response to these alarming studies, the California Transportation Committee included in their 2022 report to the legislature a recommendation requesting authorization to convene a task force to study the merits of a weight-based registration fee on passenger vehicles, similar to those already in place in other states. While results in other states have been promising, many of the aspects of such a fee need further examination, and we need to understand what the potential impacts are and understand a little bit more about the actual problem at hand before we make policy decisions. I'm very excited to have the task force underway, and I really look forward to see what the great work comes out of the task force and see what recommendations are given to the legislature. We owe it to all Californians to look into the connection between these vehicles and the fatalities so we can create an environment where everyone, including drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, can feel safe on our roadways. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Charles, for your words, and please pass our thanks along to Assemblymember Ward for his leadership on this important effort, and we really appreciate your time. The California Transportation Commission looks forward to continuing to partner with the legislature on solutions to improve safety of vulnerable road users. As we begin today, I'd like to provide some context on the work this task force will be doing in the coming months. Prioritizing safety is a key goal of the Commission in its work to invest in a multimodal transportation system that improves communities, the environment, and the economy for all Californians. With injuries and fatalities of vulnerable road users remaining at stubbornly high levels, it is important for the state to evaluate a wide range of options to improve those safety outcomes. AB 251 requires the Commission to establish this task force to study the relationship between vehicle weight and injuries to vulnerable road users, including pedestrians and bicyclists. Findings from the task force, along with the University of California, Berkeley's academic study report on these topics, will inform a final report that the Commission will submit to the legislature. Excuse me. I would like to thank all task force members, as well as members of the public for their participation and for their commitment to improving the safety of our transportation system, especially for California's most vulnerable communities. With your insight and expertise, I am confident that this task force will be effective in helping the Commission craft policy recommendations that will make traveling safer for all Californians. As we heard during the roll call, we have a diverse set of organizations participating today. I'd like to now ask task force representatives to introduce themselves in the order of the organizations listed on the screen. If we can, I believe we have a slide for that. With your name, title, and organization. And we'll start with the California Office of Traffic Safety.
Hi, yes, good morning. Stephanie Doherty, Director of the California Office of Traffic Safety.
California Safety.
Yep. Good morning, Denise Burrows. I'm the branch chief over registration policy at the California Department of Motor Vehicles.
California Highway Patrol.
Good morning, Captain Brian Cocaine. I am the commander of our commercial vehicle section.
California City Transportation Initiative.
Hi, I'm Shannon Hake, representing Cacti, and I'm a street safety program manager at SFMTI in San Francisco.
California State Association of Counties.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Mark Neuberger, legislative advocate on transportation issues with the California State Association of Counties.
Alliance for Automotive Innovation.
Hi, good morning. My name is Paul Scullion. I'm Director of Safety Policy at the Alliance for Automotive Innovation.
California New Car Dealers Association.
Hi, good morning. My name is Les Swizer. I'm the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Counsel at California New Car Dealers Association.
American Automobile Association.
Good morning. I'm Megan McKernan, Group Manager of Automotive Services for AAA, more specifically Automobile Club of Southern California.
Thank you. Streets for All.
Good morning, Mark Fuchsovich, he, him. I'm Director of State Policy for Streets for All, and we were the sponsor of AB 251.
American Association of Retired Persons. I'm not sure we have anyone from AARP. Okay, I didn't think so. Active San Gabriel Valley.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marlene Buenrostro with Active San Gabriel Valley and Program Coordinator.
National Federation of the Blind of California.
Good morning. This is Jesse Scher, Government Affairs Specialist with National Federation of the Blind. I am representing the National Federation of the Blind of California.
Thank you. Safe Streets Research.
Hey everyone, Alma Farguson, Senior Planner at Safe Streets Research, sitting in for Dr. Rebecca Sanders, who will be here shortly.
Thank you. I have lost the bottom of my screen, so whoever is after Safe Streets, apology.
I believe California Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm missing 14 and 15 at the bottom.
Who I believe is not present today. And then we have United Contractors.
Good morning, Gus Flores, Director of Government Relations for United Contractors.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate the teamwork. Thank you, task force members, for introducing yourselves and your participation today. We know it takes a lot of your time to participate in our efforts, and we really appreciate you giving us that time. I want to also thank the members of the public who have joined us in person and online as well. And I will now pass the meeting over to Kayla McDonald, who is the Commission's Program Manager for the Vehicle Weight Safety Study, and will be facilitating today's meeting. Kayla.
Thank you. And I believe David joined, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. David Azevedo from AARP California. I'm our Associate State Director for Advocacy. Apologies for some technical difficulties. I'm currently on business travel, so dealing with hotel Wi-Fi. So really excited that I was able to get on here and join you. Thank you.
And did we have any other task force members join?
Hi, folks. This is Sylvia Solis-Shaw, Executive Director for the California City Transportation Initiative, also joining. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, virtually and in person, and task force members for your participation and leadership in this space. And of course, thank you, Executive Director Taylor and Charles, for your remarks. That concludes our presentation on tab 2. And now we want to open up this item, actually on tab 2, for any task force member comments that we might have. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and open up if we have any public comment on this item.
We're not seeing any public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes tab 2. Moving on to tab 3, I'm going to be, as Executive Director Taylor mentioned, facilitating the remainder of the presentation today. So tab 3 includes an overview of the task force process and our proposed meeting schedule. And in the next few slides, I will provide more context as to why you're all here today and your roles as it relates to the vehicle weight safety study by introducing the legislative requirements of the study, UC Berkeley's academic research, and specifically how those inform what we'll be covering during the task force meetings. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, talking about the study, the academic research, and the task force process. We'll also be covering the timeline to develop the study as a whole, the timeline and content for the task force meetings. And then in our next item, tab 4, we want to hear from all of you, get comments and feedback from task force members and the public on a few questions that we've crafted today. Next slide. So AB 251, which is Government Code Section 14527.3, directs the Commission to convene a task force to study the relationship between vehicle weight and injuries and fatalities to vulnerable road users, degradation to roads, to calculate a cost-benefit analysis of imposing a fee based on vehicle weight, and also consider equity. Next slide. The University of California is developing a vehicle weight study academic report. This academic report will inform the discussion during task force meetings and the Commission's report to the legislature. So again, similar to the requirements of the legislation, the academic report includes an analysis of fatalities and serious injury trends, California vehicle fleet trends, vehicle weight policy landscape, the vehicle weight and road degradation, vehicle weight fee and consumer behavior, and equity considerations. Next slide. Commission staff will use UC Berkeley's academic study report as a discussion point during task force meetings. Commission staff will then create a summary of findings from each task force meeting and prepare a final findings report for adoption by the task force at the very last task force meeting in October 2025. Both UC Berkeley's academic study and the findings report adopted by the task force will be used by Commission staff to develop our final report to the legislature. And the next few slides will show timeline that'll explain this a little bit further. Next slide. The next 2 slides includes the timeline for the vehicle weight safety study from now until next year. So now through October 2025, we have planned monthly task force meetings. In October, like I mentioned, the final task force meeting will include a final findings report for adoption by the task force membership. In late 2025, the CTC staff will present task force findings to our Interagency Equity Advisory Committee and the California Transportation Commission. We will also have a public workshop on the draft report. Next slide. Late 2025, early 2026, the California Transportation Commission staff will prepare the draft report based on the task force findings, as well as the UC Berkeley academic study. And one other caveat I'll mention is that the UC Berkeley academic study and the task force, they're both happening concurrently and will wrap up around October of 2025. And when those are concluded, that's what will be used to inform, like I mentioned, the CTC final report that will be developed late this year and early next year. In early 2026, public review period of the draft report prepared by the California Transportation Commission staff will commence. Early 2026, we'll have the staff will present again a draft report to the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee and the California Transportation Commission. And in spring 2026, staff will present their final report again to the California Transportation Commission for approval and submit it to the California State Legislature. Next slide. And here are proposed task force meeting dates and tentative topics, subject to change. So today we have our kickoff. Again, we really appreciate you being here, and we really see this meeting as a grounding and giving you a basis to understand what will happen in the subsequent task force meetings and what the process as a whole looks like for the study. We plan on July 16th having trends in vehicle fleet and trends in road user injuries and fatalities. October 20th, 2025 would be impacts of vehicle weight on road degradation. September 9th, consumer behavior and policy response, potential policy responses. And October 29th, just in time for Halloween, we will want to have our final task force meeting to finalize findings. And these dates were all based on polls that we took with task force members. And if you see a date where potentially you might not be available, we're trying to make sure that each member who might not be able to make certain meetings could be available for others. So these appeared to be the best dates available based on the availability we received. And we do certainly plan to be available, of course, and have meetings offline one-on-one with task force members to get you up to speed and as needed. So if there are a couple meetings, 1 or 2 meetings that you can't make, just know that we'll be here and we'll be reaching out to engage you. Next slide, please. So that concludes our presentation on tab 3. And I want to open up this item for comment from task force members, if any. Hearing none. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe just a quick question. Thank you for this overview and really helpful in terms of seeing how you've laid out the work for both the task force as well as in the continuing analysis that the CTC team will do. In terms of the academic study running concurrently, do you anticipate some parts and pieces will be coming in front of the task force then as we touch each of those topic areas?
Yes. And of course, we've met with our UC Berkeley team to make sure that these topics have aligned with the task force meetings and when certain, because different pieces of the research are being done and finalized at different times at key points in the academic research, we're going to come to task force meetings with questions related to the research. So yes, they will align, and task force members will have a chance to weigh in on the research being done. I'm going to go to public comment if we received any public comment.
We do not have any public comment at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 4. So roundtable discussion on task force member perspective. Next slide, please. We have 3 questions that we wanted to ask members, first of the task force and then the public for feedback today. They are all on this slide. And we are going to go through each question one by one as well. But we just wanted to share all of the questions here on the slide in case you have a response to questions 2 or 3, you can reserve that response for that time. Go ahead and go on to question 1. So first, for task force members, again, we're going to ask task force members to respond to all 3 of these questions. And then when that's done, we're going to go to the public. So what are the key factors the state should consider when evaluating potential policy solutions to improve safety for vulnerable road users? And I didn't plan to go down the list, the roster, and call each person, but we possibly could do that. But I'm just looking for volunteers from task force members if anyone wants to speak up on this question. Go ahead. I see Jesse. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. With the National Federation of the Blind, blind people depend heavily on our hearing to navigate the world. I mean, we use our hearing to cross streets, and hearing is critical to us moving around independently. So one of the considerations that we really need to think about when it comes to policy decisions relating to blind people is it's important that electric vehicles make an audible amount of sound. Currently, smaller vehicles are required to make a sound by the Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Act, which went into effect in 2019. But it's critical that all vehicles, including larger vehicles, make an audible amount of sound that can be distinguished by blind individuals. That is one of the key factors towards keeping blind people safe in this environment. The other key area that you might want to consider is when it comes to public transportation. It's important that public transportation makes announces stops and things like that to pedestrians. But also a critical factor that I've heard about from Californians is that the kneeling systems that they use on public buses emit a sound that can be distracting or disturbing to blind people because it's a high volume. So essentially, when that sound is in effect, as a blind person is boarding public transportation that uses one of these systems, they have no way to really interact with their environment, and it puts people in a very dangerous place. So I would continue to urge this group to call on the blind community for scenarios where our feedback is critically important into ensuring our safety. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that comment. We have Shannon Haig.
Hi, I am interested in kind of 2 key factors. I think the first is expanding beyond pedestrians. I think we heard a lot about the impacts on pedestrians in particular, but very interested in by other modes, people biking, rolling, people on transit, understanding the potential impacts on a variety of roadway users. And then secondly, I'm interested in when we're looking at different policy solutions, how we can mitigate some of the impacts we're seeing from larger vehicles with infrastructure solutions. So, for example, like, does this mean if we're just now in an era of larger vehicles, does this mean that cities need to be installing lower speed limits everywhere to assess the same level of risk that we would be when vehicle sizes were smaller? So those are my two thoughts.
Thank you. Mark?
Candidly, believe it or not, I'm struggling with this question a tiny bit because I have an answer, and my answer would be the key factors that the state in general should consider are infrastructure solutions, technological solutions, regulatory solutions, technological solutions. But in the context of this task force, I kind of don't want us to consider all of those. I'm hoping to really specifically consider the specific scope of what was prescribed by AB 251, which is the relationship of specifically vehicle weight to safety, because I think there's a lot of potential answers, not all of which have the same amount of validity. Education has been brought up, I think, a number of times since I've worked in this field, and I've never seen anything robustly kind of pointing that it's an effective tool for safety. And so, yeah, I think that's my sort of struggle with this question, is that I have an answer of what the state should be doing, but how it relates to this task force is a little bit challenging to me.
Thank you. Do we have any other comment from task force? Paul?
Sure. Yeah. Perhaps to build on some of the earlier comments and just to provide sort of a bit of an industry perspective as well. Our companies have been making significant investments in, improvements in crash worthiness, crash avoidance, and driver support features to try to keep people engaged. Also in the area of pedestrian safety, looking at ways to ultimately avoid collisions from happening in the first place using pedestrian automatic emergency braking, or advanced lighting, or vehicle silence for pedestrians. So those are a number of areas we're innovating in. One of the challenges that we're always kind of wrestling with is that the changes in the fleet take time. In the interim, we're still faced with many of the challenges that we have historically been working through for many years. And many of those overlap with some of the increases in pedestrian fatalities, including speeding and impairment, which are both big factors. Generally, we're supportive of a safe system approach, and I'd sort of echo some of the earlier comments on looking at ways to have safer roads, identify ways for safer speeds, particularly in areas where there's potential for conflict between vehicles and vulnerable road users. And also, manufacturers are innovating in the vehicle space. So those are some of the kind of the areas I think perhaps to look at, including as well education, strong laws enforcement, to kind of really sort of figure out ways to change traffic safety culture more broadly and kind of raise awareness of the issue to the extent where folks may not be sort of connecting those dots, because there are obviously risks with vulnerable user crashes in general, but being able to address some of those major contributing factors like speed, for example, or potentially areas to focus on.
Thank you. And I'm going to jump first to Eric Lopez. Sorry we kept you in the lobby. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. My name is Eric Lopez. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Long Beach, but I am representing CACTI, the California Cities Transportation Initiative that comprises of the largest cities in the state of California, either public works departments or transportation agencies. One of my, as I think through this really good question, I think about, in the last few years, there's been more pressure for cities through their public works departments or their transportation agencies to take on more of the traffic enforcement, traffic calming, type of infrastructure improvements that we now require. And the state has done a great job with active transportation programs and providing funding to really kickstart innovation and allow cities to do things that normally would have been done. One of the things I'm seeing, though, is that because it's easier, state agencies tend to get either a pass or not included as we go through these new innovations. As an example, the speed camera enforcement pilot, Caltrans right-of-ways was completely excluded because it was easier to get that bill across, without to not see opposition from that. And yet, a lot of our Caltrans right-of-ways are some of the most dangerous in the state of California, especially in some of the more urban cities. And I know there's been exceptions in Malibu for Malibu. I know there's a bill out there that may consider it, but that's after the fact, right? After a year or two of a new policy allowing cities to try something new and to innovate in this space. Another example would be how the DMV is not connected to the enforcement piece of the traffic safety enforcement. And I know that's something that a lot of us would like to see change. We would love to have them on the table and be able to use their systems and their process in order to allow our enforcement activities with that new program to actually have more teeth, have more ability to enforce, especially with repeat offenders of speed that are speeding on our local streets like crazy. So that would be, if we can consider state agencies and what their role can be as we look at this issue and how they can be as part of the conversation from step one, I think it would make things a lot easier for cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to call Megan next.
Yes, thank you. So just a couple things I think that we should consider. I mean, well, there's a lot of things we should consider with this, right? And then at the end of the day, it's coming up with or figuring out what's going to be most effective. But I think having a really good understanding of the data and the statistics, so not just how heavy vehicles are and pedestrian fatalities, but are heavier vehicles in more pedestrian fatality accidents as opposed to other vehicles on the road. We have to consider vehicles are going to continue to get heavier, likely, with electrification. But another thing too that was mentioned by another task force member already, making sure that we realize that there are safety advancements of these vehicles that are continue to be more available, including automatic emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection and braking. So considering those things as vehicles become more advanced and how that's hopefully going to mitigate some of these fatalities for vulnerable road users going forward.
Thank you, Megan. David?
Hi, and thanks again for involving AARP. We represent 3.2 million members and their families all throughout California. And transportation has been a huge priority for us in a number of ways at the state, regional, and local levels all throughout California for over 10 years now. And, really excited that we're getting involved in this specific question about weight because older adults, the data does show, are a particularly vulnerable and affected and impacted community when you look at the data of traffic collisions and the resulting fatalities and injuries with it and how it really upends people's lives. Even if you can walk away, it's something that our members are worried about. Our members want to be more active. They want to drive less. They want to actually walk and bike and enjoy their communities when they walk outside their front door and not have to worry about a massive car or massive truck, scaring them off, being healthy and active and getting to where they want to go. I'm really hoping that this task force also pays attention to the goals of the Master Plan for Aging, which is an executive order that is being implemented by multiple agencies, including CTC, Caltrans, and CalSTA, under the governor's direction and mandate to ensure that we have a whole of government approach to preparing for our aging California. By 2030, in just less than 5 years, we're going to have 1 in 4 Californians over the age of 60. And so if you have more older adults in California and more older adults trying to enjoy their communities outside of their car, and you see these vehicles getting heavier and impacting safety and road degradation, all the kinds of scope that we're looking at here, age is going to be a major priority if we're going to be arriving at a good collaborative solution or set of solutions here. So really thankful and grateful that you're involving our perspective here, and look forward to also learning too. I'm actually very curious. I really enjoy the fact that you have a wide diversity of stakeholders here. I'm really looking to learn from their perspectives and see what we can do to arrive at solutions where we're not just pointing fingers of, this is this person's fault, or this is who needs to do it, and kind of really arriving at something where we can all collaboratively come together and produce solutions we can all agree on.
Thank you, David. Les?
Yeah, I just want to echo what David had to say, that I'm looking forward to a collaborative effort to find safer solutions for more vulnerable people out there on the roads. I think that the theme that I'm seeing, and I think is a good one to focus on, is that it's not just this particular issue that should be addressed. There's a lot of different issues that have to be considered, and I think moving forward as a task force, we need to look at how vehicle weight interplays with all of those other factors that come into vehicle safety. Again, just pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Les.
Good morning again. We do support the state's commitment to improving safety for vulnerable road users, but when evaluating these policy solutions, it is important to recognize the unique operational role of construction vehicles. They primarily operate on job sites with minimal impact to vulnerable road users. These are designated construction work zones, and they are often moved through regulated haul routes. So just want to be mindful of that going forward. Thank you.
And that was Gus Flores, United Contractors. Do we have any other comments from the task force on this question, or responses, I should say? Stephanie.
Thank you. And maybe just to reiterate or reinforce some of the comments that were previously made, I'm also really interested in having that expansive view or inclusive view of making sure that we consider vulnerable road users from a biking, walking, rolling, or just people generally traveling outside of vehicles. I am also super interested as we get into more of the context around the fatalities and serious injury trends. I appreciate thinking about those other causal factors that are contributing to crashes, fatalities, serious injuries, and other negative safety outcomes. We'll be really interested, though, as we dive into specifically that nexus around vehicle weight and really understanding the current fleet that's out there, as well as some of the modeling of what we think vehicles are going to look like in future years, I think will be really helpful for our discussion, so we can draw some connections to the particular scope of this task force as it relates to how we can ultimately get to a safer environment for all vulnerable road users.
Thank you. For the record, that was Stephanie, Office of Traffic Safety. Hearing no other responses, I'm going to move on to question number 2. What should the commission and the state consider to ensure that equity is addressed in this study?
Hi, this is Mark Fixovich. Sorry, I should have raised my hand, but I'm just maybe a point of clarification. I'm just curious if the CTC has a defined definition of equity. I find that a lot of people use that word in a variety of different ways. And I know that there's an equity task force at the CTC. I'm wondering if there's a standardized definition that the CTC tends to use. I think it'll help me and potentially others answer that question.
Hi, this is Paul Gozuski with the commission. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we do have an equity advisory committee that supports all of our equity work. We also have adopted a racial equity statement, but and I would defer maybe to Kayla if there's a definition in the legislation of equity for this particular effort, but the way that the commission tends to view it is very broad and all-encompassing. So our equity advisory committee we have representation of a wide variety of groups. We have individuals whose background is representing seniors, individuals with disabilities, environmental justice, various racial equity concerns. So it's really, I think, kind of a broad view that we've done, but I don't know if there was anything more specific in the legislation on this.
Yeah, the legislation specifically says the study will include analysis of equity considerations relating to different population groups in the state. As we've previously mentioned, that includes various demographic groups, persons residing in various regions of the state, persons with low incomes, persons using a vehicle for commercial versus personal use. And then it also says any other appropriate adjustments to these considerations. So again, as members of the task force, certainly members of the public, we're also looking to you as well to provide us with what that definition means to you, what your concerns are, and what we should be considering with the study. And this will be a topic that we touch on throughout the task force meetings. So this won't be the only time you hear of this. So if we don't have responses to this question this time, this will be something we continue to explore.
I appreciate the answer, and I can jump off if there's, others. Let me go back on the camera. Yeah, I think responding to the needs of vulnerable road users is quite important. I know that statistically speaking, people of color are more likely to walk, bike, and take the bus and take public transportation. And moreover, pedestrian injuries are disproportionately impacting different racial groups across California, specifically our Black and Native American communities. And so I hope that can be considered. I can let AARP speak at length about the need for seniors and this issue, but I think as we have an aging population, that also comes to mind for Streets for All. Senior citizens, these people these days, are living about 7 years past their ability to drive, and that is basically on track for every single person who's on this panel at the moment. And our goal, and I think my goal and Streets for All's goal, is to have a safe place for all users and everyone who's in the transportation system. Yeah, I think that's it for us.
David?
I'll go since Mark transitioned so nicely over. I completely agree with Mark. So AARP has what we call our livable communities agenda and priorities and policy and principles, and they mirror and align very much what Mark just kind of said there. So really wanted to make sure that I'm amplifying those points, that's very aligned with the AARP priorities, especially as it pertains to this task force and its goals. I would also, that I'm really, again, very thankful and grateful that we have this data team that is going to be putting together this report. And so I'm hoping that there is, I'm not sure if you've sent materials of kind of detailing the scope and kind of guidance that you've given this team. Sorry if I missed that, but would love to review kind of what you've asked this group to do, and any kind of conversations they've come back to, clarifying their scope, because I think what Mark and I both agree on, right, are these kinds of these equity pieces. I would really hope that that is baked in fully into the report, into the research, and that we also take an approach of what are the, what's affecting people now, and really trying to figure out the trend lines that are producing it, and seeing what we can do on those lines at various policy points, local, regional, state, regulatory, whatever, for us to produce recommendations to reduce those fatalities and injuries.
And I'll just say that in the academic research, our study, and in the task force, equity is baked in, as you called it. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and that is also included in the slides that we sent around to task force members and are posted on our website as well. And be happy to speak one-on-one as well with you about that further if you have any other questions about the scope of this study and the task force. And I'll call on Jesse. Oh, unless you go ahead.
No, just wanted to say thank you.
No problem. Jesse?
Yeah, the National Federation of the Blind is really invested in fully autonomous vehicle technology as a group that solely, I mean, blind people don't qualify for a driver's license, and many low vision people don't qualify for a driver's license. So we think that you should investigate the role that fully autonomous vehicles, meaning level 4 autonomous vehicles with no driver in the car, it would be, I think, interesting to explore how many of those vehicles are colliding or how many fatalities exist with this technology. We're not aware of a significant number in comparison to cars that do have drivers. So this is an area that we're really invested in, and we don't want to see unnecessary regulations placed on fully autonomous vehicles. We really would like to see California expanding the operation of fully autonomous vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Do we have any other responses from task force members online or in the room? Oh, Paul? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this fully answers the question, but sort of thinking about any recommendations in the context of folks who may rely on larger vehicles for their personal mobility, and then sort of thinking through the lens of like larger families who may not have sort of other options. I think from some of the other topics that we touched on earlier, like making sure that if there are driver education campaigns, that those are kind of across the board, or perhaps sort of targeting groups which may be most at risk, both for awareness of safe operation of the vehicle, as well as sort of being a safe pedestrian in certain areas as well. And then with respect to like infrastructure investments, making sure that those are kind of equitably applied as future infrastructure updates are made. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but perhaps some just items to think about as we go through further discussion.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, seeing no other hands up from task force members, we can move on to question 3. What perspective do you hope we take away at the conclusion of these task force meetings? And go ahead.
Warren, Brian Cocaine. One of the things that I'm looking forward to take away is just those different perspectives, right? Because I think with me being with the CHP, I have a very specific perspective on crashes in general and seeing these things day in and day out. So I'm really looking forward to taking away that from the different task members to see it from their perspective moving forward.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I think something that comes to mind for me is just there's so many things to consider when you're talking about, whether it's traffic accidents with other vehicles or pedestrians or cyclists involved. There's distraction. I see people all the time walking across the street looking at their phone and they're not paying attention to what they're doing, not let alone driver distraction. So I think just making sure we have the perspective that we're considering everything that is contributing to the rise in these accidents, and then especially the fatalities, just to make sure that we have a really good, solid, path forward at the end.
Thank you, Megan. Mark? Nurberger.
Thank you. And the main things I hope we're able to take away from this, obviously the bill lays out the complexity, but I think kind of tailing off the previous speakers, it is a very complex issue, and there are definitely, in the sense of the context of what we're trying to address it, there's different approaches. I think a lot of the times folks kind of think of the city context and think, well, there needs to be improved striping and road diets, things along those lines. But in other contexts, it might make more sense to adopt that getting to a vehicle or kind of weight and passive safety is more of a deconflict. Have pedestrians and cyclists be more separated, not necessarily trying to slam them onto the same roadway and hope for the best. Also, too, to kind of touch base from the county road perspective, is the vehicle weight and degradation of road infrastructure. You're very aware that as vehicle weight increases, and same thing applies in the city context too, that the roads are going to start degrading faster as vehicle weights increase. And I think between vehicle safety features and also just the inherent weight that we have with the state policy encourage electric vehicles, weights are just going to continue to go up. So degradation of roads is going to continue to accelerate. Those are the main kind of things that I want to the main takeaways on the complexities for the task force.
Thank you. And Mark?
I just want to, I guess, first and foremost, echo Mark Newberger's thoughts on road weight and vehicle weight on road degradation. It's a particularly, I think, salient issue. If there is a 5% change on this on a statewide lens, could represent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of additional maintenance that is going to be put on our cities and our counties, of which I think counties have a much lower GDP per capita. Sorry, roadways per capita, excuse me. Apologies there. So yeah, I think that's a really important perspective that comes to mind, especially because our local governments have been put in a position to really, I think for the most part in the present day moment, maintain the existing transportation systems that they have, while us as advocates are looking for them to create better, brighter, more forward-thinking transportation systems with money that many of these local governments don't have. And so I think trying to balance that need for, I think, true infrastructure solutions with the sort of environment that we do live in, and an environment that I think punishes the largely and disproportionately people of color and lower income people who do use our alternative modes of transportation.
Thank you, Mark. David?
Yeah, just a quick perspective, kind of at a 30,000-foot level, and then a brief question. I think, I really want us to also focus on responsibility here. I think it's important that, in these conversations, right, when you're driving a larger vehicle, you have a responsibility to be safe, and driving is a privilege. And I think that's really lost in a lot of conversations, is that, a lot of folks who are getting these bigger cars need to be, they need to be aware that how they drive affects the street and the roads and people around them that are not in cars and that are in cars in a way that a smaller vehicle does not. And I think it's important that we have that perspective all throughout this conversation, because I think that responsibility piece is just not often talked about. And I have a question, actually, because we're talking about obviously accidents. We're going to be, that's going to be a huge theme here, road degradation. I'm wondering, do we have anyone that can speak to the insurance piece of this? Because there's absolutely, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this maybe is out of the scope of the legislation, but with insurance costs rising exponentially and obviously eating into the costs of fixed income individuals like our AARP members, And to earlier points made, of course, on the state budget impact and to keep up roadways. Insurance is I think something that we should be at least be thinking about, or I'm hoping that somebody, I see AAA is on here, but I'm not sure if that's their insurance arm. But I think what we do here could benefit, and make insurance more affordable, potentially. So just want to ask that question if we have that perspective shared, or correct me if this is something that's out of scope.
Yeah, that's a question that we could get back to you about, and the task force. I'm going to move on to Jesse.
Thank you. What I would say is that it's important to keep in mind that the needs of a smaller disability population, like the blind community, has a significant effect on the general public, and in this sphere, on pedestrians. Like I mentioned earlier, we're really dependent on sounds in our environment to travel safely, crossing streets and traveling through our environment. But our needs are also they overlap. People who may not have our disability, people who are able to see, things like audio cues are very important for the general public as well. It was mentioned earlier, a person using a cell phone, maybe crossing the street, might not be paying attention to what they're seeing around them, but they will hear vehicles approaching. So as we formulate, concepts for how to move this task force forward, please consider that even though it may be a minority view, it might be extremely beneficial for the broader public. A last example of that is when you think about curb cuts, you think about wheelchair users benefiting from curb cuts, but most of the public benefits from a curb cut, whether it's a mom or dad pushing a stroller or a person walking who has trouble stepping up. The general public benefits when we look at diverse populations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Shannon?
The perspective that I hope that's taken away at the end of this is really the role within vehicles in the safe system approach. I think particularly what effect does larger vehicle weights and sizes have on the other aspects of the safe system, and how can changes in any one of the other safe system aspects affect vehicle weights and sizes. So essentially, like, in order to get to a closer safe system, if we're just going to assume that vehicles are going to continue to get larger and larger, what does that require in terms of not only like the roadway systems that people are operating on, but everything from post-crash care to like user behavior, all of those other aspects. If one of the factors of the safe system is changing dramatically, I think there are impacts on all of the other aspects of the system. And in order to kind of maintain that same level of safety, there's a little bit of a give and take that needs to happen from other aspects of the system. And I'm interested in the perspective in where that give is coming from, I think, in all of the other aspects of the system.
Thank you, Shannon. Eric?
Yeah, I was thinking about just the differences across the state with the age of our infrastructure. And I think you see a lot of differences, just not just between urban areas and rural areas, but within certain rural areas and urban areas themselves, you have some infrastructure that's relatively recent, but a lot that is aging and truly falling apart in many respects. Whether it's the flood control system under the roadways, whether it's all the accessibility issues on sidewalks and curbs and ramps and grade changes, or the conditions of the streets themselves. And I really hope that the task force takes into account how incredibly difficult it is to rebuild a lot of these aging areas. We just finished a corridor here in Long Beach. It cost us $50 million to completely rebuild the streets, the sidewalks, add protected bike lanes, add new signals at 19 intersection locations, to add fiber to connect everything together and connect it back to the city's traffic management center. So it took about 13 funding sources and over 10 years to put all of that together to modernize one 3-mile stretch within a city that has, it's just a big area. So want to take that into account. I know, as we look at some of these impacts and how we can mitigate, the additional impacts of heavier vehicles. Just let's put that in the context of how incredibly difficult it is to modernize infrastructure, and how we, if there are ways we can make that easier for cities and counties. I think that would be a huge plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Stephanie from Office of Traffic Safety. I think maybe to build on some of the other comments that have been made, I really do think that perspective of having that underlying context of what trends and factors are driving vulnerable road user, serious injuries, and fatalities, so we can just have that foundational understanding will be really critical, and really appreciate then that piece of thinking about how then are we holistically approaching and tackling our safety issues. Obviously, for those of us who are working in the behavioral safety space, where we're thinking about education, enforcement, and going out and looking at our, being really engaging in communities in finding solutions to their very real traffic safety problems. But that piece of creating a safety culture that we have hit upon in the conversation today, of really where we are emphasizing that shared responsibility, I think is so important for the context or perspectives of how we pull that into our conversation. So we are thinking about safe vehicles, safe road users, safe roads, all the elements of the system working holistically, and having that context then as this task force starts to maybe drill into a more discrete set of findings and recommendations that are attached to vehicle weight, but really appreciate that kind of grounding in the current world, and then grounding holistically and what is the collective effort happening at the local, federal, state level to advance safety.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do we have any other comments from the task force in question 3? Paul?
Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of the comments made previously. I think given that we have a diverse group of stakeholders here, I think we can all collectively learn from each other and find out kind of collaborative sort of actionable items that we can recommend on a path forward. So looking forward to the discussion on a number of topics.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments to question 3, move to close this item and open up public comment. I think we can skip the break, I think. So open up public comment. I'm going to show a slide with all 3 questions. If any member of the public has submitted a comment or wants to speak in regard to the 3 questions presented. Can you go? Thank you. Go ahead. Actually, we have the podium here, or
There we go. Good afternoon. Thanks to the CTC for hosting this meeting today. My name is Rachel Carpenter. I'm Acting Deputy Secretary over Safety and Enforcement at CalSTA. My comment is general and gets at sort of that first question. So one of the basic tenets of the safe system approach is keeping impact energy on the human body at tolerable levels. And the safe system concept of kinetic energy transfer and management are really, grounded in science and represent a mechanistic approach to predicting crash injury. So I hope that this task force sort of grounds their recommendations in the science. We know that force equals mass times acceleration. And so making sure to the points that were made, I think, by Shannon at SFMTA, if that mass component of vehicles is going to be increasing, then what is it that we will need to do in order to make sure that the force on a human body, likely a vulnerable road user, what will need to happen to make sure that we are still on a path to reach our 0 by 2050 goal? Thanks.
Have you received any other public comments?
We do not have any other public comment at this time.
Okay. That concludes our public comment for tab 4. Moving on to tab 5. Want to open up this item. This is just for general public comment. Have you received any other public comments?
We have not received any public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And before adjourning, do we have any other comments? Things that our task force members or anybody wants to say? Okay. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We really look forward to working with you all and hearing your perspectives and seeing what you think of the research as we move along in the task force process. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.